Welcome to this first session of the podcast, Stories and Thoughts. I'm your host, Ana Paula Altamirano, and today I will be talking through a breathtaking literary work titled A Meeting in the Dark. A Meeting in the Dark, a short story written by the outstanding Kenyan novelist Ngugi wa Thiong'o, narrates the tragic fate of two young lovers in the middle of social and religious struggles. It takes place in a small village, located in Limuru, Kenya, on the time after the country's liberation from the British rule. John, a well-educated man with a bright future ahead of him, gets his girlfriend Wamuhu pregnant and finds himself within an impossible conflict that ends up with her murder. It is natural for the reader to find the ending unexpected and crude. Therefore, the main problem found in the story is to understand what drove John to such state of madness to kill his lover. For this reason, this literary analysis suggests three significant components that might have influenced the main character's behavior: religion, his father, and his community. The discussion will begin with the effect that religion had in John's life from different aspects. Then, the relation of John with his father will be analyzed from both the father and the son perspective. Afterwards, the role of community will be considered as an important feature for the construction of the main character's values and objectives. In the long run, these three factors interrelate with each other and somehow determine John's attitude throughout the story. In the first place, religion seemed to have a great impact in John's life. His father was a preacher who showed himself as a strict man when it came to the name of God, always trying to give the best example with his family. In this sense, the boy was indoctrinated with Calvinistic beliefs since he was born. He was constantly reminded of the importance of being the best servant of the Lord. Here, the scene plays a major role on the main character's moral sense. Regarding this, the text expresses the following: He, John, would fall from the gates of heaven down through the open waiting gates of hell. Since John has been taught that conceiving a child before marriage was a severe fault, he expected the worst punishment in the afterlife. Besides, his conflict with Wamuhu was related to religious concepts and rules. Women themselves were seen as the motive for sin. Even his father fell into their trap when conceiving John. Now he prayed to save the soul of his wife. As John learned, he should not have followed the same path. Thereby, a mixture of disappointment and guilt might have emerged in his conscience. It must be mentioned that the Calvinistic community had strong judgments against circumcised women. Ngugi wa Thiong'o wrote about this several times. She was circumcised, and he knew that his father and the church would never consent to such a marriage. Female circumcision was still part of the Kenyan village's tradition, followed by the ones who had not converted to the foreign religion. It certainly is a topic that constantly affected John emotionally and psychologically as he thought about the probability of marrying Wamuhu, a circumcised girl. It also manifested in nightmares influenced by his prejudices as a religious man. Nowadays, as stated by the World Health Organization, this procedure is considered an attempt to human rights that has serious health and physical consequences. It also promotes sexual inequality. In this sense, it could be interpreted that religion would protect women's welfare. Nevertheless, the story describes not only circumcision prohibition, but also a rejection to women who had suffered from this ancestral practice. This results in an unsubstantiated discrimination based on a religious discourse that limited the character's freedom to have a stable relationship and solve his conflict differently. In the second place, the relationship that John maintained with his father is understood as a motor of the story. On one hand, the position of the father is presented. As a preacher of the community, he felt obliged to guide his son through their religious path. Like the text says, he always looked at him as though John was a sinner, one who had to be watched all the time. He felt his job with his son was to be strict and teach him nothing more than religious precepts and how to be successful in life. For this reason, he developed a distant relation. lacking of affection or any further interest in his son. He even forbade his wife to tell John non-religious stories. In this context, it is clear that the father operates as a figure of despotic authority, which causes continuous oppression in the family and does not allow a healthy association of John with his parents. On the other hand, the son's perspective of his relationship with his father appeared to be controversial and ambivalent. To start with, the fear was a constant when it came to his father. The harsh way he was raised affected him to the point of confusion. This passage points out the issue. He feared his father, though sometimes he wondered why he feared him. The feeling incorporated so naturally to himself that he could not think of his father on any other way. By all odds, this fear contributes to the tension of the story. If the father were to figure out about Wamuhu's pregnancy, it could only lead to an awful outcome. Moreover, the oppression and the pressure of being the perfect son drove him to a lust for rebellion. John's thoughts are summarized in this passage. What right have you to know where I was? One day I am going to revolt against you. But, immediately, John knew that this act of rebellion was something beyond him. For a young man like John, it was natural that a sense of rebellion arose, as well as demands for more liberty and independence. He envied the other kids who seemed to be happy with their normal lives. His current situation inspired him even more to finally rebel and marry Wamuhu. However, his previous experiences related to fear did not allow him to do so. At the same time, John had the necessity to make his father proud and bond with him once and for all. According to Ngugi wa Thiong'o, it was unfortunate that this scar had come into his life at this time, when he was going to Makerere, and it would have brought him closer to his father. After all, the boy worked hard to please his father, in a poor and marginalized village. Having reached a higher education level, that of the white men, represented a substantial accomplishment. Now, having to raise an unwanted child and marry an unwanted woman, he wouldn't be able to keep up with his father's plan. This could only distance him even more. In the third place, the community modeled a part of the main character's mindset. Generally speaking, the story emphasized the strong sense of belonging and collectivity within the tribe. For example, all mature women were traditionally called mother as a way of recognition of their wisdom, care, and responsibility for the others. Moreover, there were people who constantly mentioned something being bad or good for the tribe. Within this framework, John's accomplishments and failures were part of something bigger than himself. They could have a repercussion on the community. Likewise, keeping appearances as the son of the preacher seemed to cause a considerable pressure on the young man. When John remembered his trouble, he thought to himself, he did not know what he feared the most: the action his father would take when he found out, or the loss of the little faith the simple villagers had placed in him. He was trusted and admired by everyone. No one expected him to betray his people in any way, but now he managed to disappoint them. He desperately wondered what they would say when they find out about his mistake. To summarize, three main ingredients made up the tension within the story. First, religion made John think about himself as a hopeless sinner after conceiving a child with a circumcised woman. Second, the complex relationship with his father represented oppression, a desire to confront him, and in the meantime, please him to receive some acknowledgement. On every action, he thought of his father, and at the end, driven by fear and anxiety, he made the worst choice. Third, community was a meaningful component in the character's psychology, since the culture and the sense of collectivity were always present. John felt having a responsibility not only for himself, but for the whole tribe after what he did. In this manner, the character built up a complex imaginary that drove him to complete madness. Unaware of his actions, he has created and then killed. Without any doubt, Ngugi wa Thiong'o achieved to capture the conflict as its own and transport the reader to the harsh reality of this little Kenyan village. Dear listeners, I hope you like this program and connected with the story I presented today. Thank you very much.